So, good evening all. Welcome to the Consulate General of Italy in New York. It's a real pleasure to be here for this event, Colors of Italy, which is an absolute first, I would say, that we organize on the occasion of the Black History Month, and we are very proud of it. I have to say, and now I'm talking about to those following online, that we would have liked to host many more people, and actually we got many requests for participation in person, but due to COVID-related restriction, that was not possible. Sorry for that. Sorry also for the fact that you will keep your KN95 mask throughout the event and no drinks at all, not even one drink, but this was the only way to be able to organize this event, and we really wanted to do it. So, maybe I don't have to explain what the Black History Month is, and then Fred will probably elaborate on that. This is an observance since 1976. It's an important month to recall important people, events, and accomplishment by Black Americans throughout the African diaspora throughout the years and centuries. And you know very well that New York in this regard is a quite unique city. I think it's multi-ethnical as no other, and probably more diverse religiously, ethnically, culturally, and socially than most of other cities, not only in the United States, but all over the world. And the Afro-American have given a huge contribution to this city. What people do not know is the contribution that Afro-Italian have been giving most recently and keep giving to the city. And as a Consul General of Italy, I was really keen in initiating what I think should be an annual recurrence, an initiative, just to spread the light on the accomplishment of the Afro-Italians of New York. And we have many. I discovered there are many. Of course, New York is an Italian city in many respects, with such huge Italian roots. But I think that the presence and contributions of this small community of Afro-Italian here is very meaningful. So I'm really honored today to have here, first of all, Fred Kudjo Kuwornu was a co-organizer and will be moderator of this event. But let me list, because I want to do it personally. I promise you would do it, but I think it would be nice that I do it. I want to mention all of our guests, and I think it's important. Apart from Fred, who will take over in a couple of minutes, who is a brilliant Italian-Ghanaian filmmaker and producer, we have Borinquen Gallo, Italian-Puerto Rican artist, Ghebresellassie. I learned it, I tried along many times. Was a marketer and creative strategist, born and raised in Milan by Eritrean parents. Valentino Agunu, Italian-Nigerian musician, and Jacqueline Greaves, my dear friend, was born in Jamaica but became Italian due to her love for our country and her husband. I don't know. Should I have said your husband and your country? Anyway, don't tell Antonio that the way I put it. So tonight you will listen to many different stories, and all of them are really exciting, actually. But there is a common line. First of all, there is a part of Italian identity in all of you. But there is also, I would say, creativity that you share, but also capacity or adaptability or flexibility in facing the challenges of this city, which are quite unique, I say. Many people can come, but only the best can remain for long, I always say. And I think there is also what I really noted immediately reading about your biographic profiles, a kind of ethical or, you know, purpose or purpose-oriented approach in what you do. And this is something that you share as well. And then, of course, you share the love for Italy and New York, as all of us. So without further ado, thank you, first of all, to all of you for being here and for your contribution. And thank you for all the people present here and online for their participation. Fred, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I'm very pleased to introduce this event that for the first time we decided to set in New York, and so we are really honored to have this part inside of the Black History Month celebration to celebrate also the Black Italian experience. As the council introduced, I'm a filmmaker. My name is Fred Kudjo Kuwornu. I'm also an activist. Since a decade, I'm really involved to promote the Black experience in Italy through different art forms, but also opportunity to dialogue with the institution. So we are really pleased that the Italian institution are really trying to show how diverse is Italy, and also in the case of a city of New York, how also New Yorkers are, as you know, diverse. The format of tonight, also because we have a lot of people online, is also a way to celebrate through the stories, because sharing stories is very important to sharing an experience, and through their stories, of course, we can explore much more. And I will try also to introduce the guests that accept to be here tonight, their story. And of course, I think we will have a portion for your question and a portion for a Q&A maybe in the next half hour. So I want to start for the reason why New York is so important for hosting an event like that. And to do that, I want to share with you the first clip.
Early last week, I was invited by filmmaker Fred Kudjo to join his meeting of Afro-Italians in Union Square, New York. Here is a taster of how it went.
With your friends. English. This was a day in which we have a meeting in Union Square. The person who held this meeting were all Italian, all Black Italians with different backgrounds.
Ci siamo incontrati, abbiamo chiacchierato, stranamente eravamo tutti neri ma italiani e ci siamo divertiti, ci siamo sentiti a casa però a New York, quindi abbiamo portato l'Italia qua a New York, stranieri a New York però. E è bello sentirsi a casa con persone come te che magari capiscono quello che provi, quello che senti, quello che ami e quello che riesci a condividere con semplicità. È stata una bella giornata e spero che riusciremo a farlo di nuovo, a rincontrarci. Alla prossima. Ciao.
And this happened many years ago, happened here in New York, and actually I was really, did you remember? You didn't remember. I was really surprised at the time to find a community that would look like me in New York City, and maybe some of you were surprised, others not. But we didn't know that in 5 years, basically, we were able to bring this experience, to share this experience in an organic way. So to create a situation that can be not only a dialogue, but a starter to introduce not only the experience of Afro-Italians, but of course the experience of every Italian with an immigrant background or a diverse background. So I hope that, of course, in the future we can share other experience. And Eden, you were there at the time. I want to introduce something about the bio of Ghebresellassie. She's a sports strategist. She is born in Milan by Italian-Eritrean parents. And basically, she's here since maybe 20 years or something like that, because you came after the high school in Italy, you came to study in the United States. We are really lucky that the story of Eden, I think, has been portrayed by a show of Rai Television, so we want to courtesy thanking Rai Television and also Valerio Ciriaci who filmed the clip. We want to show the clip of Eden.
Nel senso che in Italia, quando crescevo io, era un po' difficile essere, diciamo, l'unica persona nera a scuola, l'unica persona nera sui mezzi. L'America è sempre stato il mio sogno e quindi ho deciso di venire a fare l'università e ho iniziato il mio percorso qua più di 21 anni fa. Io mi ricordo che a 12 anni, alle medie, una mia amica eritrea mi ha consigliato di leggere il libro, l'autobiografia di Malcolm X, che tra l'altro ancora ho, con tutti i miei disegnini di quando avevo 12 anni, e mi ha cambiato un po' la vita. E la Harlem Renaissance ha collegato tutto per me, l'Africa, i neri americani, ha aperto la conoscenza di una rappresentazione delle persone come me diversa. Subito dopo la laurea ho deciso di venire a vivere a New York. Cercavo lavoro e intanto ero cameriera e mentre io ero sull'autobus per andare da casa a lavorare al ristorante vedo entrare Joe Levy e Joe Levy era il chief editor di Rolling Stone Magazine. Allora si siede vicino a me, iniziamo a chiacchierare, gli racconto sì, mi sono appena laureata, sto cercando lavoro e io 2 settimane dopo lavoravo a Rolling Stone Magazine. Poi erano già 8 anni che vivevo in America e ho scoperto che la FIFA aveva un master in storia, management e diritto dello sport. Ho avuto un'altra volta, cioè questa grande apertura mentale di aver capito che comunque c'è un mondo incredibile dello sport e volevo imparare, volevo farne parte. E quindi ho fatto questo master e mi sono laureata. Allora sono tornata a New York, ho avuto l'opportunità di lavorare per New York Cosmos, che è la squadra dove Pelé ha giocato negli anni 70, e poi mentre lavoravo là ho trovato il lavoro a ESPN. Con loro ho avuto veramente delle esperienze incredibili, facendo il classico in Barcellona, il classico in Argentina, ho fatto X Games in Europa e poi X Games in America.
This is just a portion, sorry. This is just a portion of the clip produced to tell the story of Eden. And I was really excited when I see also the picture with Kobe Bryant, that you have the opportunity in your life to meet, I think, more than one time in your career at ESPN. My question is also connected to your activity as a professional. So as a woman in particular in a system and in industry of the sports system that is managed by male usually. So I read that you are one of the few African, in particular a few women that had the degree at the FIFA master. And the second question is, how did you see growing up the community of Afro-Italian United States since you came here 20 years ago?
Hello, everyone. I'm going to try to answer the first question. So being in the business for over 14 years, I've always been kind of the only woman sometimes in the room, especially the only black woman. And then if you add the factor that I'm also the only African woman, it's very different. There is always a little like nuances with culture that come, and there are sometimes those nuances that you need to enter the like boys club or to make sure that people take you seriously in the business. So I think that's kind of like an environment that I'm still navigating. I'm working right now at a startup that it's actually anti-boys club. Majority of the people that work there are women. I'm the first black woman to work there, but as the executive panel, there's more women, there is a black man, there is an Indian man. So I basically, you know, when they tell you like, make sure you have a seat at the table, I am working in places where the table is already made for me and I don't have to pull up a chair. So that's to answer the first question. To answer the other question, the Afro-Italian community, it's always been so unique. A lot of times, Afro-Italians leave Italy to escape and not to follow just their passions or just to kind of chase something, is actually to escape something, because Italy can be a very tough place for us immigrants who are born there and not given citizenship at birth. The cultural difference with your parents is also very different, because you grew up speaking the language perfectly and your parents, sometimes they don't even recognize themselves in their children. And so when I came here many years ago, I went to college in Virginia, I would meet Afro-Italians here and there, but everybody was in their own corner or in their own kind of like, and sometimes they wouldn't even claim being Afro-Italians or they spoke Italian. They just were happy to be in a place where you're Black and nobody needs to label you, or you don't need to kind of, tell people why you speak Italian, why you speak it so well, where are you from, your hair, and all of that. So actually the first time that I found a beautiful group of Afro-Italians is thanks to you 5 years ago, and I just, yeah. Like I always had a lot of friends, but I think the great job that you're doing is to actually build and nourish the community of Afro-Italians, so I thank you for that.
Thank you so much. And now the story of Borinquen Gallo. I think that you came to United States more than 25 years ago. 33. Oh, wow.
Difficult to say without giving away my age.
I don't want to explore nothing more about your age. But we can see, sharing a part of your story that I filmed with my company, The Right Films, I think a couple of years ago. So we can share the clip number 2.
È stata un'esperienza stupenda e una sorpresa incredibile per me fare una mostra qui nel cuore di Chelsea, nell'epicentro del mondo dell'arte mondiale. Abbiamo avuto l'opportunità di esibire 3 opere, una Deadly Poppy Field, che è costituita da materiali plastici riciclati, buste di plastiche di Chinatown, del negozio del Whitney che erano state buttate e salvate, e poi il caution tape, che è un elemento ricorrente nel mio lavoro. Il lavoro verde si chiama Green Unplugged e ha dei cavi, oltre al debris netting, il caution tape e le buste di plastica riciclati. Questi cavi e questi attacchi non hanno modo di essere plugged in, no? Come dicono in inglese, e quindi c'è questo riferimento patetico, diciamo, alla nostra lack of connection o mancanza di connessione alla natura, l'uno con l'altro, alla comunità, socialmente, come viviamo disconnessi, anche se ironicamente abbiamo più mezzi di comunicazione, abbiamo più difficoltà a comunicare, diciamo, a livello umano. C'è questo concetto di identità nomade che secondo me è molto interessante, anche molto più comune, anche forse è il futuro, no? Questa cosa che abbiamo questa ossessione, specialmente in New York, con le razze, con un'identità fissa, mentre invece l'identità per me è sempre stata una cosa molto più fluida, una cosa che cambia durante la giornata. Comunque viviamo in un'economia di consumo dove tutto è un eccesso, tutto è un consumarsi, e naturalmente non posso essere completamente critica di questo perché ne sono parte. Quindi parte del lavoro anche evoca questi meccanismi che, di nuovo, tornando al discorso di identità, sono cose che ci rendono comunemente uguali. Quindi questa idea che alla fine siamo molto più simili di quello che sembra, no? E poi c'è anche sempre questa ricerca della spiritualità, diciamo, in questo. Di cos'è il significato, cioè c'è una ricerca di significato, di meaningfulness, no? Si dice, e questo viene anche un po' dalla mia storia, dove ho riscoperto anche la fede e un modo di di trovare qualcosa che sia più solido al di là di solo consumare.
Borinquen, oh sorry. Okay. Borinquen has a terrific resume and experience. She's also a teacher, a professor at the Pratt Institute. As you see in this clip, is a visual contemporary artist. And until a couple of years ago, she was Bronx-based. And Bronx, as you imagine, is a huge part of New York City, in which the heritage are basically Italian or Italian-American and Puerto Rican, Caribbean, and Latin American. So how did you grow up in a place in which basically you were a part of these communities, but at the same time people at the time maybe would like to put in some box?
Yes, I grew up in the Bronx, very proud of that. And I lived in Rome until the age of 13, and then my immigrant experience is a little bit different because I didn't come by myself. I came with my family who was following a missionary impulse. They became missionary for the Catholic Church, so they moved from Rome to the South Bronx. And the South Bronx in 1988 was very derelict, and so I went to a high school and with all gangs and metal detectors, and it was incredible. The Italians in the school were more, the pink girls with the hairspray up to here, and the pink ladies with the bomber. So it was difficult to fit in because I didn't, people did not know what to do with me, So I decided not to fit in and to be an artist, not to even try. And in art, thanks to also an angel, I believe, which was the art teacher in this high school that told me about Cooper Union. And from there, I was able to participate in the Cooper Union Saturday program, which is a program that looks to assist high school students and give them the skills, to apply to a higher ed education institution. And so there, my journey with art began, right? And also my journey with reconciling myself with my history. At the beginning, I hated being here. I hated being in the Bronx. And then I saw that there was a beautiful design of love for me in this country, which included, an art career that I didn't expect to have, and also included meeting my husband in the Bronx, which I didn't think would ever happen. So it was incredible for me. And in terms of the cultural experience and the layered experience, it just opened up my identity to this. I began to make friends of all ages. I have very close tie to the Puerto Rican community, but also I have many Dominican friends. And I think this is due to my Catholic inheritance, that really where identity is something that gives us the ability to think of each other as universally the same. And I have to give this credit to having it received in Italy, from my parents, still today, I'm still very grateful to be here, first of all, but also for the possibility to make art, because I think making art helps you to be critical and helps you process information, not only about what you are going through, which for me was, this whole personal transformation that I was undergoing while in the Bronx, and which from this rebellion to then completely loving it and wanting to stay here, and now I could never consider not leaving, here, but and also social transformation that I witnessed of the Bronx also evolving in these years, being rebuilt, and hopefully continuing to be a part of that. I'm currently working in a series of projects there that are a little bit challenging, one of which is going to be happening. It's a public art project, and it's going to happen in the new 40th Precinct Station House that's being built there. It's, for the past 5 years, been trying to be built, and so they've asked artists to help reimagine what police-community relationships may be like, which is virtually an impossible mission. But it's important to raise the conversation about how art can also facilitate a different way of interacting with the community and to certainly transform social spheres the way we know them, and trying to make a difference in the community there. So I don't know if I answered the question, but I'm already over time.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Now, I want to introduce something more about the story of Valentino. Actually, we didn't meet 5 years ago only here in New York at Union Square. The first time Valentino was a part of the characters of my documentary called 18 New Solis, a documentary for those who didn't have the chance to see about the issues of citizenship in Italy for the sons of immigrants born and raised in Italy. Actually, the documentary has been made in 2011, so I met you, it was, I think, December 2011. And when I made this documentary, I didn't consider anymore to see this guy. But I think that the first encounter by chance was on a train or something like that 3 years after. And then for a lot of particularly path of the lives of Valentino moved to United States. And after 10 years, nothing changed about this issue, unfortunately, of the citizenship law in Italy. And this year I decided to create a sort of follow-up about my documentary 18 New Soli. And the follow-up is following simply this excellent artist and person to tell what happened in the life of a person after 10 years in which, of course, these issues, unfortunately for the lives not of Valentino, but also of many other Italians, is still a real issue. So the video that I want to share is a sort of rough cut of the trailer of the feature documentary about Valentino that I decided to bring for the first time here tonight, and so we can share the story of Valentino. I think it's the video number 4.
Valentino e Anastasio. Buonasera, benvenuti. Ciao. Buonasera, benvenuti.
Sono nato a San Camillo di Roma. Ho presentato la richiesta per la cittadinanza, ma siccome studio non ho reddito, quindi probabilmente la rifiuteranno. Spesso per farmi un complimento mi dicono come bene parli l'italiano e io rispondo grazie. Anche lei.
What do I see when I look out the window? I see the subway. What do I see when I see the subway? I imagine my life. I imagine the life of an immigrant. You know, always moving from point A to point B, but with this baggage, with this luggage you're carrying, you know, your culture. And all these paths that intersect are opportunities, culture, and languages, things you pick up from all the places you grew up in. And you moving from, you know, this point that's your origin to the destination, wherever you're trying to, you know, finalize your arrival. You get to pick up and learn and see so many things, and you integrate, and you're integrating wielding both cultures of where you're coming from or where you're growing up in to where you're going to. It continues enrichment of cultures, which makes you a hybrid. Honor, courage, commitment to a purpose. Just to be able to help, because nowadays we take so many things for granted, but help is something that we could all render, but very few people do such. Wado. This music is changing me, and I'm changing my music. I learned how to own my own, I would say, diversity through music. I love to speak English and Italian at the same time, and usually speaking with people who you don't know or don't know how to speak either or, it's not a normal thing, but you can do it in a song. And Afrobeats started giving me an opportunity to create something different. Non sono italiano, anche se dovrei, ma per legge non lo sono, perché le leggi non sono abbastanza aggiornate per includere, quindi ci escludono. My name is Valentino Agunu, but you could call me Wado. I'm Nigerian, Italian, and American. And this is my story.
Every time that I encounter something about your lives, of course, I'm encountering something that other people who look like us experience. And so, of course, for me, it's important to, as a filmmaker, but also as a storyteller, to promote different stories. There is something in your journey, that is a journey, that for me surprised a lot. And actually, it was also the time in which I was called. I received a call by a federal U.S. Navy officer who asked me, we need to do a background check to this guy, and he gave us your contact, so if you can go to have an interview. So I have this interview with this U.S. Navy officer, and for all the interview, this U.S. Navy officer asked me, I can't understand. This guy is born in Italy and is not Italian. I think that she asked me 3 or 4 times, this captain, this question. So I want to ask you something. Why you, of course, right now you are pursuing your career as a music artist, and maybe tonight I know that you will give us the opportunity to hear some song about your project. But why you joined a military organization in your youth, and what this organization give you as leadership skills that also I noticed in a lot of talks that we made recently in some university or institution.
So the question is why, pretty much?
So what this organization like US Navy gave you as skills of leadership, and also why you joined this organization?
Well, good evening, everyone. I would say the Navy, the US Navy, gave me an opportunity that Italy didn't give me. And obviously, it hurts a lot because I remember I went to Flaminio. That's where one of the military bases was in Rome, and I went to ask if I could join. But I think a year before, they changed the law. So before, if you were born in Italy, you could join the military. But then the year before I went, if you were born, you can't join. You have to be a citizen. And at this point, I'm not yet a citizen, even if I was born and raised in Italy. And I learned English because this is not my first language. So what did they teach me? They gave me an opportunity, and you know, when you're given an opportunity to do something, you also, it's an opportunity that is given to you, so you have to make the best out of it. And obviously I learned so many things. It's just a different world, you know, and I thought I wouldn't fit in, but once I got there, I saw so many other people that were like me. You see African people, you see European people, you see everyone who joins for a purpose, obviously to better their life, but also to better people around them. And I really wanted to serve, and this was an opportunity for me to serve. And you know, that's what I learned from the Navy, you know, being able to help people, so not putting yourself first, put people first. And I tried to see things from a different perspective. So I would say before joining, I was really mad at Italy for not giving me what I felt like was mine, you know. But after I joined the Navy, I realized that sometimes some things are meant to be, but in a specific way. So you might be looking at this direction, but your opportunity is right next to you in the other. So I accepted what I was given, and I tried to make the best out of it. And that's my experience with the Navy.
Thank you so much. Michelangelo, your son. Hi, Michelangelo. Italianness is not only a color. Italianness is not only the birthplace where you are born. I think Italianness is much more, of course. And we are really proud to have tonight Jacqueline Greaves, because, of course, in one sense, there are a lot of people who are Italians not only because they are citizen or not citizen, or they are born or not born in Italy, but there are experiences of life that embrace their story with Italy. So I would like to share something about the career of Jacqueline that we know, but there are people that are watching from the streaming. And for those, I want to say that Jacqueline, for example, she's a great blog and food writer. And so for this reason, I was really captured by some clips, and we have to thank also NYU Casa Italiana, because one of these clips has been taken by their website, and we can play the video. Thanks.
I'm Charmaine Lord, and this is my friend Jackie Monda, who is a fabulous baker.
Thank you, Charmaine, for inviting me today. And this, as Charmaine said, is the easy version of the Jamaican black pudding, Christmas pudding, which, as you probably realize, is a version of the English pudding, Christmas pudding,
For sure.
and obviously a residue of the colonial slave period. There are people who are actually doing research, trying to preserve certain traditions, flavors, methods, techniques that are really important not to lose, because I believe that culture today, everything's becoming so global, so international. We need to remember who we are, what our roots are, and the only thing I think that's left is cooking. Food, our culture, our cultural cuisine, that is who we are at the end of the day. And in my house, it's a little bit weird because I'm Jamaican, my husband's Italian, but we manage.
And of course, I never think a lot about how is important food to promote a culture, but also how food can be promoted by different people with different backgrounds. So for this reason, my question is, how many Italians or people who love Italy are joining your blog? And how is growing your work to make known your idea of food and culture?
Good evening, everyone. I think that I feel almost fake being here because I'm Jamaican, became an American citizen, and then I married an Italian and got Italian citizenship. A little bit easier than most people. But one of the things that I try to do is talk not just about the Jamaican culture, but also about the Italian culture, because I have 3 children who are Italian. They have dual citizenship, but they're also Jamaican. I never bothered getting another passport for them, but they're all 3. And I think that, today it's very important to remember our roots. And I have a lot of Italians, actually, both in Italy as well as here, who follow me. And I think because I love Italian food and I love the Italian culture, and one of the things that drew me to Italy was the sense of family, I love the fact that each region has its own culture. And I love that has remained. And I think that's really important. If you don't know who you are, you're Eritrean Italian, it's important that you know you're Eritrean Italian. It's important that you know that you're Tuscan or that you are Calabrian. Because if you don't remember those things, you lose yourself. You become just like anybody else. You're another pebble on the street. It doesn't matter. But that keeps you tied to your family, tied to your culture, tied to yourself. It's really important. And I enjoy talking about Italian food, and I enjoy finding the similarities between Italian food and Jamaican food, because there are. Because remember, Jamaica was discovered by Columbus. So there are descendants of the Italian sailors in Jamaica, and there are things that have come from other cultures in Jamaica. And I can tell you about certain things. Like in Venice, there's certain dishes that are similar to dishes in Jamaica. Why is that? The Jews who came from Europe, the fact that it's a seaport, the trading of people, of spices, of this and that. So history can be taught, not just through wars, not through economics, not just through politics, but food and family should be an important part of our education, and it's no longer part of it. And so that's what I do. That's what I talk about, and that's what I feel is important.
Thank you so much. I imagine that there are, so this is maybe the right time also because we are a little bit in delay to open the Q&A. So we want to really, we are really curious to answer to your questions. And we have maybe to manage with a second microphone. Ok, perfect. Chi è il coraggioso, la coraggiosa?
Good evening, everyone. My name is William Russo, and I'm representing the Italian Heritage and Culture Committee, Joe Shami, President. And I love the title. I want to thank the Consul General for having it. Colors of Italy reminds me of the American slogan, E pluribus unum, out of many, one. And in America, we do have our own colors of America, and it's very diverse. My own career background has to do with public housing. I was the director of the Borough of Manhattan for all of the housing projects in Manhattan. I've worked in the Bronx. And what I think a society has to do, and I want someone to comment on the difference between Italy and the United States as it relates to creating the circumstances. Each one of you, whether it's food, sports, music, art, and even the military, there was the framework there. In my own experience in public housing, in Italy it would be Casa Popolare, is kind of like an incubator. And I personally supervised many housing developments where the common denominator was poverty. And there were people of different colors, different backgrounds, and there were interracial marriages, Chinese and Puerto Rican, et cetera. And it's not like in the news, but I feel that in the United States, sometimes we sell ourselves short. We've actually had those interactions happening for several generations, whereas in Italy, I would imagine from what I hear, it may be a little more difficult for Africans from Africa or people of color to find those opportunities that you may find here. So that's what I was thinking of in terms of a question is, what's the difference between where we are in America in terms of creating those opportunities for people of all different colors and where your experience is being in Italy?
Yeah, who want to answer?
Okay, that's a good question, and I think you had an amazing job. So I think that one thing that I always say about Italy is that if you remove all the immigrants and you leave just Italians, like what the traditional Italian used to be, white, Italy is already tough. Bureaucracy, very archaic rules and regulations, and sometimes mentality. So when to that you add the unknown factor of different cultures, different looks, different smells, if you want to talk about food, different music styles, right? So when you add more of that and then you add, media, there is this fear that is added to it. So as Valentino has mentioned, I grew up in Italy in the 80s and 90s, and then I moved here. When you go back, visually, it's beautiful. I'm from the north, I'm from Milan. So it's beautiful because you do see a cosmopolitan city. You see, everybody together. But then when you go to an office, when you have to interact with people, the mentality or the TV, it's actually worse than when I was growing up there in the 80s, 90s. And I think because of the current global just to finish up, along with, I think Italy fighting itself, I think they're having interest in becoming progressive, but they're very attached to their beautiful traditional culture that I also belong to. Yes.
Just to add to her point, because you asked a very good question, I believe Italy of its own right now is trying to follow a trend and not start the trend. So by trying to follow, sometimes you're trying to patch holes. And in Italy right now, and it's sad to say it, but it's easier to become Italian if you're a footballer, if you're famous, if you have a social media, how can I put it? If you're famous, pretty much, because if you're a person who was legally born there, who lived there, who paid his taxes, who never
introduce each other to my family, which I always believed had no problems. I never thought my family would judge a person like a car by its color, by its model. People are people, and I was not afraid about this introduction. Actually, I will tell you what was my experience afterwards. So when I came to Italy, it was the first time. My husband is a huge, tall, African-American guy. He's 6'3", ball player, dressed like a New Yorker. At that time, I used to have this large T-shirt to his knees, like 3X, 4X. It was the style. To the point that my mother, while we were unpacking the luggage, asked me why we brought sheets from the United States. Anyway, that's not a joke. Unfortunately, was the question she asked me. But having said that, I was closely paying attention to your description and your experience. And I was ready for that. And the first time I brought my husband, I said, listen, first of all, you need to learn how to sit at the table like an Italian, because we judge people by the way they eat. If you can hold a fork, they will love you forever. So we spent hours training my husband how to use forks and sitting at a table like an Italian, not to be misjudged. But I was nicely surprised when I first arrived at the airport in Bari, because by the time we got off the plane, my husband was walking, he had luggage. Bari is a disaster in December. And I saw a group of people next to my husband. So I rushed towards him thinking that someone was discriminating against him. And I'm an attorney, I'm a little aggressive per se, so I approached him roughly and trying to understand why all this Guardia di Finanza was doing, thinking they already were discriminating against the black men. And I was happily surprised because they were just curious. And they were asking me questions and autographs because they thought he was a ball player. So my question to you is, beyond the initial difficulty in living in Italy as a real minority, because unfortunately we don't have yet this group of people, do you really feel that there is a real racism, not being able to share culture, or you think it's just difficult because you are a smaller number rather than a cultural thing? Because in my experience, it's only curiosity driven by the diversity, and I would like you to be honest about your answer.
Yeah. I'm going to answer that just because you're talking about your husband and the fact that he's someone from outside of Italy going in. I can tell you that the first time I went to Italy was in 1986. And I'd lived in Spain. I've traveled a lot before going to Italy. And I have to say that at that time, Italy was actually quite nice in terms of racial. I mean, I could walk on the streets. I mean, I would do things. People wouldn't stop me. Things that, here still today, sometimes I go into a store and the security guard will follow me around the store in New York City today. And that never happened in Italy. I would go into restaurants and things like that. That's changed. I think with the people coming in, the boat people coming in, I think there's a huge fear But I think that this is I'm telling my opinion as an external person. I've never lived in Italy really as a, and I've always lived in basically a white family environment in Italy. But as a black person walking on the street, I've never had an issue. And I think that in general, my opinion is that Italians as a population are not racist. I think there's a lot of ignorance, but there isn't a lot, it isn't inherent. I think the racism is something that has really developed. And I say that as, again, not living in Italy, not going through the school systems, not going through all the things that you went through. It is a different, from a black perspective going into Italy, as a tourist or going to live there. Because let me tell you, Italy is full of black people, and they are there. I've found so many Jamaicans, there are so many Caribbean people, there are so many women, black women, American women who've chosen to leave the US and live in Italy now. I'm shocked at how many. When I went there first, 86, they weren't there. Now, I mean, every time I go to Italy, I meet new black women. There are lots, and they're all creatives. They're artists, they're writers. So that's my experience. So I don't know if you
I'm just going to attach myself to what you said. I grew up also, I was, there in the 80s and early 90s. But for me, I grew up, and after the first comment, are you adopted, or are you, oh, you look like Arnold, or you look like, my nickname was Gaddafi. First was Gaddafi, then was Che Guevara, then was, then thank God, a few more celebrities came along. So then, so it was more accepted. So then they asked my brother, oh, you look like Vin Diesel, or no, you look like Denzel Washington, and you look like Halle Berry, and you look like, everyone was, so this reference, always that. So I found that after that past impression and even the occasional joke, I think that the love and the acceptance I've experienced in Italy, I don't know if I've seen here, I think that we forget how systemic racism is really an American invention. And that, having been to even high school and transitioning to high school here and seeing how everything was segregated, and also going back to the gentleman, being in the Bronx and seeing the housing being segregated, taking the 2 train when I went to college, and the 6 train, and then taking it back uptown and seeing everybody get off on 96th Street. And I was by myself going all the way up, right? And so that is definitely something to be reckoned with. And the real problem is not Italy, or we have the problem everywhere. The problem is education, really, and having an intervention in the schools, and helping us to understand that the problem is poverty. It's poverty and lack of education, and that we share, in different countries, in different situations. So how to enlighten that situation, how to expand the vision of who we are, has to do a lot with education, having art programs. And that's not equitable here either. Some schools have great art programs, some schools have none here. Some schools have great resources here because of the taxes that the residents pay, some don't. So there's even pockets of incredible poverty, incredible racial injustice in this New York City, the most powerful city in the world. And this is where I discovered that I was a minority. Here, I was told, oh, you are a minority. In Italy, I didn't know because it didn't exist, the concept, because I was the only one at the time. Now there are more. And also for me, Fred was one of the first people that I met, and another friend that introduced me, and brilliantly kind of is introducing this idea of we have to expand the definition of racial demographics in Italy. And cultural diversity, not in the sense of the cliche, because I also hear the other side, the right wing, saying, now we're going to talk about this, it's all blah, 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 right? But in the deep sense of really understanding that we're people, just like it's your husband, it's your niece, it's your sons that are Italian, that is, and once you merge at that level, then it's you. It's a question of identification with the other. So if you merge, you identify, you become the other.
Thank you so much. Just a question. how many minutes we have? Because I want to be, of course, on schedule. I'm the boss. Okay, so yeah. So if there is other question, of course, please feel free to ask. Okay. And yeah, before I want to just complete this round, because of course talking about racism, it's a very different and diverse way to have a different experience. But of course there are a lot of, in particular, I'm joining since a decade the institution in the United States, giving lectures and having the opportunity, of course, to join a program also in the Italian Studies department. And there are a lot of studies that are released in the last 5 years, not only by academics and scholars, but also there are events. I see also someone from Magazzino Art that try to reconnect the story of being black and the blackness in Italy, connected, of course, to the legacy of the Italian colonialism. And so for saying that there are some part of the Italian history who track the roots inside the contemporary Italian society. This happened with the Italian colonialism, like the French, British, and also the German-made colonies. So this was a process that started since the end of 19th century to create a different idea of race in Europe, and particularly in Italy. The first idea, actually, unfortunately, has been created during the unification of Italy. So the Southern Italian were defined and represented as Euro-African by other Italians like Cesare Lombroso or other scientists. So, of course, racism is not just sometimes being or having prejudice or bias, but sometimes is a social construct of the society. So even it was different by the social construct made in the United States or South America, not very different was the social construct made in Europe. Even Europe didn't have the exploitation of slavery, but this is not the point. So, yeah, next question.
Grazie. Grazie Fred, grazie Borinquen, grazie a tutti. Following up on what Borinquen was saying about education, my idea, and I'm throwing it out there, is to update the educational material that is actually used in American schools to teach Italian, because as Anna Valeria knows very well, the director of the education office, sometimes the educational material that we use in schools is really outdated. It doesn't portray any of the colors of Italy. So with Fred, Borinquen, and all of you, maybe we can apply for a grant from the National Endowment of Humanities, an NEH grant. I wouldn't suggest now the Italian government because we are dealing with that in another way. It's very complicated, but maybe on the American side. So I know, Fred, you're very involved with a lot of universities, but it would be very good to create an updated
yeah, sure.
teaching material.
Sure. And
I'm
of
just
course,
throwing it out there.
Yeah, there is a huge demand by not only Americans. I traveled in Brazil and Canada and other countries who are really diverse, and so they really enjoy and like the Italian culture, and they really enjoy and like more the Italian culture when it's represented diverse like it's Italy. So I always receive a lot of engagement by students, American students, when I show things about Black Italy, but also other ethnicity, or when I show something about the diversity about Italy. So there are a lot of things to do. Actually, I'm planning. I don't want to promote myself, but I will need your support in the future. I'm working on a documentary about the African presence during the Renaissance in Europe, and in particular in Italy. So about things that we don't know, but are in the arts, are in the paintings, are in the monuments of the Renaissance. So those people were there, and was not a fictional idea of the artist to represent Africans in Renaissance, because at the time the portrait and the art was committed by powerful people that they want to represent themselves as they wanted, and they want to represent their powerness of the Medici or the Pope in the way that, like maybe now a premier when he's doing a photo op picture in his office want to do. So for this reason, this is an important part of the story of Italy. Italy has been diverse. I always said in many occasions since the Roman Empire until the 18th century. It's only from the 18th century, in particular from the unification of Italy, that there is the idea to create the idea of political idea of Italianness, and is the time in which this political idea of Italianness it's a coincidence also with a mono race. So basically, even this was not happening since the Roman Empire. Do you have other questions?
What I would like to ask to each of you, it's actually something Jacqueline evoked already, but how would you define your Italian identity? Which features? I mean, if I ask you, how do you feel Italian, or what is left from your background, your education, in terms of personality, not only of experience, and of course, I would like each of you to expand on this. Please don't say nothing, because you get out of the room.
Funziona? Okay. So I think Valentino earlier kind of mentioned that he said he cannot just speak Italian or just Nigerian or Pidgin, the language. So for me it's the same, and even deeper, because out of everyone on this panel, I am also from Eritrea, who's a colony, former colony of Italy from the 18th century. And so because of colonization, people had to learn how to speak Italian. So a lot of my family, when I went back to Eritrea, spoke Italian fluently, as well as knowing the culture very well. And when you go back to Eritrea, you have a hair salon that is Gianni e Gina. The main pizza spot is Pizzeria Napoli. And then you have Cinema Impero, Cinema Roma. So it's like, you know. So the difference is when I was growing up in Italy, at home, it was an Eritrean household. Thankfully, my mom, just like Jackie's an amazing cook, so she knew how to cook like pizza from scratch, pasta from scratch, so I was lucky when it comes to the culinary way. But I grew up eating with the fork and knife, and I grew up eating with my hands in injera, so that was home. And then every time I left, the way I speak and the way I move my hands, I was Italian, but people don't receive you like that simply because of my hair or, you know, my skin. And so when I came to America, it's funny, when I was working at ESPN, my colleagues will say, Erin, what are you today? Are you Eritrean? Are you Italian? Are you American? Because identity is such a very unique thing that luckily I was exposed to so many cultures. I'm an American citizen too now. So there are days where I feel like I'm super American. There are days where I'm like, I wish I was in Eritrea and I was eating injera from scratch from my mommy. Or there are days that I just want to be, you know, with my Italian friends listening to house music and, you know, eating spaghetti. So, you know, to say that about identity. And I just kind of want to very quickly respond to your question about racism, and they're attached to education. So if you really want to talk about education and you Google what it means, the word racism is when one population thinks they're superior to the other one, and therefore they try to bring you down systemically, right? So racism, people think that is simply the N-word, go back to your country, very aggressive ways, but there is very other nuances ways that are happening. So even though Italy is not as deeply rooted in the systemic discrimination there is in America, the fact that after being raised and born there, he's not a citizen, that's a systemic racism, okay? So maybe everybody has always treated him very nicely, but if the bureaucracy doesn't recognize him psychologically and mentally, that's not a good thing. So I love Italy, but there is a lot of work to do.
Well, the question you ask is not a simple question to answer, to be honest. Growing up in Italy, I was the Nigerian. When I went to Nigeria, my mom said it was a 6-month holiday, turned out to be 4 years. In Nigeria, I was the Italian. And coming here to the States, they're like, what are you? And I'm like, I can't call myself a hybrid. What I could say is when I sleep, when I dream, when I eat Italian. But I also eat very spicy, which is Nigerian. So you can't really choose like what shoe you fit in. You know, you kind of mold it, especially when you're an immigrant. So it's, as I said, like the trains, you know, they come from here to there, but they pick up a luggage. So the luggage that I'm carrying, obviously, if you close your eyes and you listen to me when I speak Italian, you're not gonna know I'm black. You just think, oh, he's an Italian person, but you don't know if being Italian is being white or black or whatever origin you have. It's what is inside of you, you know? So I don't really choose, but I think I'm a mix from all that I've gone through. And just one point of her, she asked if Italian people are racist. I'm not gonna say they are, but I'm gonna say ignorance is something that exists. But at the same time, we live in 2022 where you have a cell phone and you can Google what size of shoe FedEx wears, so you can really Google so much information. So people are not that interested until they're compelled to be interested. And I could use an example. My ex, her grandmother, when she saw me the first time, she was like, Madonna, chissà, come ci parlo con questo? She didn't know how to talk to me because she thought I didn't understand Italian. And she's like, bello mio, mi capisci? And I was like, no, stia tranquilla, la capisco. I was like, Madonna, a posto. Then she was like, then she told me one thing. She was like, mi prendi la cacchiavella? And I was like, cacchiavella. No, culatera, caccavella. And I was like, what does that mean? You know, I didn't really know. So caccavella means a pot for people that are from Napoli. But back then when she said that, I thought she was asking me if I had diarrhea. But so, you know, it's so many little things that put you, that build what you are, you know? So just like my mom, when she comes home and on weekends she wants to do lasagna, people will be like, oh, your mom is doing lasagna? I'm like, yeah, she was in Italy for over 25 years, almost 30. And oh, wow, that's how nice of you bringing something from them. Like, no, that's actually part of us. It's not like we feel like we want to be Italian, you know? It's part of our family. When I talk to my mom, I speak to her in Italian. But my younger sisters, they forgot Italian, so they speak English. And they get mad at me when I speak Italian-English, because I actually mix it. So I'm really doing an effort here to speak only English. So it's just when you grow up in a place, but then you grow up in another and another, you build an identity. So it's not just one. And if you try to force only one, I believe that's where you're discriminating. Even people here, after you've been in the US for over a couple of years, there are a couple of things you forget. I know you miss il bidet. That is something very important. It might be funny, you know, it might be funny, but it's really important. I miss it. And I think that it might be a very silly connubio, but I miss that a lot, and I think that makes me very much Italian.
I don't know how I'm going to follow up to that. But it's an impossible question to answer because, as they already said, and I agree with both of the answers completely, without falling into stereotyping, you know, oh, this part of me is Italian because I like this or I don't like the other. But I mean, if I have to be honest, which I think is what we were asked to do, is I feel like my sense of aesthetic and my sensibility to beauty, I have to attribute to growing up surrounded by just, you know, the architect. I still to this day, and even when I was in the Bronx, when the architecture was all derelict, I responded to some of those buildings like spiritually almost. They were like empty cathedrals, you know, and that came from that experience of when I was a little girl walking through St. Peter's Square, and just that transporting experience that architecture can do for you, you know. So just that sense of space and an aesthetic, I think, even translated in contemporary urban contexts. For me, I was nurtured with that in my surroundings in Rome, Padova, in Italy, and so that's one thing. And then the other thing remains, again, this idea of eating at the table, which I discovered many people don't do, right? And having people over for dinner and continuing to do that, even now after the pandemic has been very tough, to kind of reinstill the habit of inviting each other and sharing food, like this idea of sharing food, that I can actually cook for you. You come over, we have dinner together. It's not always eating out, you know. And then, yeah, so these are the two things that come to mind. And then what I was saying before, this idea of this is spirituality. I think Italy, despite the consumerism, despite our idolatry of America, you know, that at its core has a spiritual identity that it's important not to leave behind. And so these are the things that I hold on to. Yes.
For me, I think, well, I think of myself as a Jamaican, married to an Italian, and I live in New York. What I really identified with in Italy was the whole concept of family, concept of community. I like the fact that I think here in America, especially going to school here in America, I came here when I was 10, was one of the things was the fact that people are very much individuals, even in school. You know, you don't have this sense of, let me go out with my group. In Italy, when I went there, I mean, my husband still has friends from he was 3 years old. And I'm friends with their wives. Their children are friends of my children. There's this continuity and this sense of community that I left behind in Jamaica. And that's what I get out of Italy, I think, the most, is that sense that you belong to something. That's what I get, that you belong to something. And my children feel that way. I mean, I have one daughter who moved back to Italy. She was born in Rome, and she spent all her life here, basically, and then 4 years ago, she moved to Milan. And she loves living there, and she has her friends, and it's a very international community she has. And I do, too. When I go to Italy, I have lots of friends. Well, here, I'm mainly with Americans or my Italian friends. But in Italy, it's much more international, at least at my level, that I love it. Here I feel constricted in some ways. I feel like I have to belong to something. You know, I have to belong to, this group, I was kind of like, wow, I'm Afro-Italian. I didn't know that. You know, it was kind of nice, you know, I never thought of myself that way. And here I was always like, the Americans would say to me when I first moved here, well, you're not one of them. And I'm like, who's them? And they're like, you're not one of those black people. I'm like, but I am black. You know, and it was weird. I mean, I learned that I was, as you said, I learned that I was a minority here. I mean, my great-grandfather, when my great-grandfathers came off the boat from China, I mean, I grew up in a totally international, totally, you know, ethnic, multi-ethnic, multi-racial family. So for me to come to America and find out I was black, it was like, oh, okay, but what about my white Chinese grandmother? You know, it's kind of like you have to give something up, and I'm not giving that up. I love my grandmother. You know, so Italy, I found, from my experience, was that there was still that sense of community and sense of family, which I really, really like, and I really like that for my children. And that's it.
So, I don't know if there is other question. If not, because I think we are also running out of time, we are really close to dinner. Yeah, and we want to also have the opportunity to you are always agreeing to yeah, we want to share the opportunity to have a couple of songs of Valentino Wado, if you like to join with us, because his music artistic journey is a really important project. In the trailer it was very difficult to understand, but basically he's bringing an important genre of music like Afrobeat with a language that is not all English, but is pidgin English, Italian, Spanish. So it's a very pioneer work for not only the genre of the music, but also I think for Italy. So we will end this event with this couple of songs, and I imagine the Consul want to say something.
Exactly. I think Valentino will end this event. But I wanted again to thank you all. I think there was a lots of food for thought tonight. I mean, things that we knew, but hearing from you, your different experience, I think was very enriching for all of us. So I'm even happier that we organized this event and that we'll repeat this experience in the future. So thank you really very much for all of you. Thank you. And Valentino.
Thank you.
Puoi usare questo, però chiedo di alzare la musica.
Oh. Yes, okay. Oh, Mona Lisa. But can you stop it a second? Okay, so before I proceed with this, I'll just give a very quick introduction of the project I'm working on, pretty much. It started as a challenge. I went to a producer in Italy and I asked him if he could help me on the project I'm working on. And he told me back then that, sì, però neri che cantano in italiano non esistono. Then I was like, are you sure about that? And he was like, yes. I was like, I grew up listening to, Rocky Roberts. And that was a black guy, right? And he was like, sì, mi sa che ho detto una... Yes, and I was like, yes. So what I was trying to bring out with this music is pretty much, I love to speak my Italian and English and both sometimes, and I mix it, and people don't understand it, but I'm like, probably in songs, if they hear a song and they like it, they might get to sing along with it, even if they don't understand what is in the song. So the first one is Mona Lisa, which is just a cover, but I want you guys to enjoy it, so let's go with it. Play. Yes, so... Yeah, you might turn it down a little bit. Just the mic, but you could turn the music up. You're my brown sugar, and I'm your sugar cane. She won't chop the dodo, give on the plantain. You're my brown sugar, and I'm your sugar cane. She won't chop the dodo, turn up the music, give on the plantain. E se ti fermi qua si ferma, 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 e se ti fermi qua si ferma tempo. La mia vita senza te è un quadro completo. E se ti fermi qua si ferma tempo. La mia vita senza te è un quadro completo. La mia Mona Lisa, la mia Mona Lisa. La mia Mona Lisa, la mia Mona Lisa, mi uccidi, ormai, mi penso non so perché. Can you turn the music up, because I'm not feeling this. Devi alzare un po' il volume. Stop that, wait, stop it. Play the second one and turn the music up a little bit. Maybe that might be better. Che non mi sento, no, non mi sento, scusate, vorrei... I know. Yo, 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2. Can you hear me? Okay. We could try. Let's try it. Se no, posso semplicemente leggervi un testo di una mia canzone che magari passa un messaggio in modo più diretto, se la qualità non è. Ah, ok, mi sentite? Ok, I'm sorry. I know, I'm sorry about that. Go with the... Sì, proviamoci, dai. Yes, so. Oh, now, wow. Wado. Yes. Okay. You're my brown sugar, and I'm your sugar cane. She won't chop the dodo. Give on the plantain. You're my brown sugar, and I'm your sugar cane. She won't chop the dodo. Give on the plantain. Et se ti fermi qua, si ferma. E 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 se ti fermi qua, si ferma il tempo. La mia vita senza te è un quadro completo. E se ti fermi qua, si ferma il tempo. La mia vita senza te è un quadro completo. La mia Mona Lisa, la mia Mona Lisa, la mia Mona Lisa, la mia Mona Lisa. Mi uccidi, bumaie, più ci penso non so perché. Modo in cui mi prendi, baby. Only you fit to kill my grace. Mi uccidi, bumaie, when I see you my heart is. Modo in cui mi prendi, baby. Only you fit to kill my grace. So che non vedi l'ora, se mi wanna kiss me, non vedi l'ora. Non vedi l'ora, non vedi l'ora, non vedi l'ora, non vedi l'ora. I'ma give it to you, baby. I'ma give it to you, baby. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Oh, the second one. Vai con la seconda.
Yeah.
E flat, the tune's God.
Okay. Wado, it's about that time I see you. I'ma send a Uber, baby, come true. I've been kinda in the mood, and you know that you make me feel good. It's about that time I see you. I go send you my baby, come true. I've been kinda in the mood, and you know that you make me feel good. Me I come, me I roll up, me I pull up in the place. Me no send anybody, I know look who J face. Me I turn up with that energy, the earth. When I pull up in my gang, party till the sun cool down. Can you feel the vibration? And don't forget to mention all the things I do to you. Can you love what I do to you? Can you feel the vibration? Can you feel it? And don't forget to mention all the things I do to you. Can you love what I do to you? Shalewa, give it to you, make you sing nana. Shalewa, kudurna, give it to you, baby, all night long. Yawa go do, yawa don't gas you. Don't tell your mommy that you calling me daddy. Money yawa go do, yawa don't gas you. Don't tell your mommy that you calling me daddy. È quello che importa a me, è quello che tu pensi di me. È da tempo che vorresti le mie mani su di te. Said I feel to die for you, girl, I wanna ride with you. I feel to fall a man for you. Me say move your body, baby, turn around. Go anywhere, Shalewa, give it to you, make you sing nana. Shalewa, kudurna, give it to you, baby, all night long. Yawa go do, yawa don't gas you. Don't tell your mommy that you calling me daddy. Money yawa go do, yawa don't gas you. Don't tell your mommy that you calling me daddy. Thank you.
Perdonate la qualità dell'audio, ma facciamo quello che possiamo.